Welcome back to Gray Squadron Gaming, where we have another exciting interview. We have our good friend Michael from AMG. Michael, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Michael Plummer. I am the game development manager at Atomic Mass Games. What that means is that I help to kind of steward the team forward and make sure that all the projects are moving smoothly as we continue to work on all of the games that we make. And I'm also the lead developer on Star Wars Shatterpoint.
Well, that's exciting. It's a great game.
Well, thank you.
Well, this
We
is
have
your
a lot of
first
fun
time on your
making it.
channel, so welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You guys dropped a little bit of news yesterday, a little bit of update, if you will.
Yeah, we had a couple things go out for sure.
It's very exciting from a player who's been playing since launch day. It's getting some of the, let's say, the core set people and some others updated and kind of brought up to where everyone else seems to be at this point.
Absolutely. It's very exciting for us too. We've been working on this update for quite a bit of time. So finally seeing people get it has been really, really gratifying and awesome.
Yeah, and you said you've been working on it for a long time. So roughly, when did you guys kind of start looking into this, or at least how did that go about? Like, what made you think maybe we should revisit some of these characters again?
I mean, as far as when we started looking into it, we kind of knew from the get-go, like right when the game came out, that we were going to have to do this eventually, right? Like we've done it with the other games, and we know that nothing that we make is going to be perfect or completely stand the test of time. And, we live in a day and age where we have the opportunity to go in and make these kind of adjustments and small changes and fixes to kind of keep everything on sort of an even keel. So, right from the start, we knew that we were going to have to do it. And like as the game came out and as people were playing things and discovering things and finding things that we didn't find in playtest, we kept a little change log, like a little log of like, okay, well maybe we'll need to take a look at these, and people are complaining about these units, and XYZ didn't work out the way we thought it would. So we've kind of had a running tally of what we thought we might need to look at, and some of those things ended up not needing to be looked at, and others got added that we didn't realize we need to look at, of course. But we knew it was coming the whole time. But as for like when we started actual work on this update, uh I mean it was at least last summer, because everything has to go through internal playtest and then external playtest, and then it needs to go through graphic design and licensing and this and that. Like it has the whole like gambit of everything that has to go through. So these updates aren't something where like we decide we're going to do it and then 2 months later it comes out. It's a whole long drawn out process with a lot of work involved in it. So yeah, so I guess the short answer is like since day one.
Good. And when you guys were doing this and looking at, let's say, since last summer, what was your main objective or goal going into this update? What did you want to accomplish with this?
I mean, again, this is a very simple answer, and I think it might sound a little flippant, but the goal was to make the game better. Um, so I think that that's kind of the goal that you want to walk into any kind of update like this with. And then we didn't want to go in with too much of an idea of like we're only gonna fix 10 characters, right? Because then you're stuck saying like, okay, well, it's going to be 10. It's got to be the 10, right? Like which 10 are the worst off, and then you end up missing something. So we knew kind of like what our scope was as far as how much time we had to work on this, and we knew that the overarching goal was make the game better. And we had to define like what does better mean. And so in our discussions when we were talking about that, what it really kind of came down to, and sort of has always come down to with Shatterpoint, is that we wanted to feel like you can play your favorite character and not feel like you're at a disadvantage. We want it to feel like you can make the squad and the strike team of your dreams and put it on the table and have a good time. Like you may not feel like you're absolutely going to win, and you may not be, like the cream of the cream, because at the end of the day there is always going to be something that is the best. That's just the way the games work. And not everything can be the best, but we can hope that the gap between the best and the worst is not astronomical. So that's kind of what we were going for. Like close those gaps, make the game better, make the game more fun, and let people play with more of their miniatures.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And since you guys started to now, there's been at least one, if not two, mission packs updated and released.
Mhm.
I'm assuming when you tested these characters, you probably looked at mission packs we haven't even seen yet as a community, I would.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. We're constantly working on stuff that's in the future. So like we know that, there might be a mission that's going to make these things shine, and we just need to wait a little longer. And that, there's other units that are coming that are going to do X, Y, and Z. They're going to make these things shine a little more than they do. So sometimes it's hard to sit there and wait for those things to come, but knowing that they're coming makes it a little easier on us.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It's hard for us to not know what you guys know. You probably like a few
Yeah,
steps ahead of us in the process, so it makes sense.
we have that benefit.
Yeah, definitely. Or that I'm sure it's sometimes difficult too when you're talking or when you're playing, like which update am I playing or looking at currently?
One of the hardest things, especially when I'm on one of these, is remembering what I'm allowed to talk about and what I'm not. So yeah, there are pluses and minuses.
Exactly. And the original core box, the
Mhm.
starter box, if you will, had seemed to have a lot of changes through the character stuff, especially the light side. I think everyone but maybe Rex, forgive me if I missed somebody there, kind of got touched on the good side. We got Anakin, the five of
Yeah, I guess that's
Ahsoka.
true. Over the course of time, because we've also updated Clan Cries and
Yeah, they were updated
Bo-Katan like
last time.
previously. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's true. So, I think that that makes a lot of sense, honestly, because when we were making the core set, so like when you're making a game like this, you make your core set, obviously, it's like the first thing that you build, right? And it's kind of the basis of everything. So like all the core ideas in there and everything like does what it's supposed to do. And you're also working on the first few things that are going to come out because it all kind of gets wrapped into one at the beginning. And so they're kind of the basis of the game and the core of the game, and so they need to feel very indicative of what the game is, and they kind of want to show you everything that the game can do, and they want to feel like characters that you can have and take with you and like have for the long haul of the game, right? Like these characters will always be good. They're kind of old standbys kind of thing, and they just weren't feeling like that anymore. And the again, like little game dev truth for you, like you get better at things as you do them more. And at the end of the day, like we've been making units for Shatterpoint for a couple of years now, and we're just better at it than we used to be. And we have a better idea of where we can push the envelope and where units can be powerful and what kind of crazy stuff they can do without breaking our game. And so this was an opportunity for us to take some of those early units when you're making your core set in your early game. I feel like everyone's very timid. Everyone's very scared to push the envelope too much because you have this like fresh new baby game, and just like you would treat a baby, you want to take care of this thing and you want to nourish it and you want to make sure that it grows healthy and big and strong. But there comes a day when you have to push the bird out of the nest, and like you got to try something crazy. And sometimes we hit with those, and I think that Maul in the core set, Maul didn't see any changes. And Maul's fantastic. Maul sees play at all levels. People love playing Maul. He's a lot of fun. He does crazy stuff, and it's great. And the other characters in the core set, like initially, like when the game first came out, they felt great. Everybody loved them. And you still see characters like Anakin in top tables. You still see Ahsoka occasionally at top tables, even before this update. But us having an opportunity to kind of take those characters that we want to be forever friends, and kind of bring them up to the same level and make sure that they're in essence playing the same game that everyone else is, was just a great opportunity and something that we really knew we wanted to focus on making sure that if we could only hit 10 characters, it could be the core set.
Yeah. And out of the core set people that you guys, let's just say upgraded or changed, what would you say was the hardest one to pin down, or what was the hardest one to kind of figure out for you guys internally?
Oh man, they all had their challenges, right? Um, Ooh, this one's tough. I think at the end of the day, it was Anakin. Anakin had to be the hardest one. Not because I think Anakin was the easiest one to figure out like what things he should be doing. Like we wanted him to feel more like a general, and that was the playtest feedback that we were getting. So, we wanted him to move other characters. We wanted him to feel like he had a little more direct impact on the battlefield than he necessarily felt like he had in his original incarnation, and we wanted to make sure that those extra attacks and things felt a little bit easier to pull off, so you could really feel like Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
Like Anakin Skywalker is the big hero who comes and saves the day. And I say this all the time, but I think like when you're dealing with Anakin Skywalker, you know two things. You know that number one, it's going to save the day, and you know that number two, he did not follow orders. And so we very much
It's true.
wanted to make sure that we had that feel on the tabletop. And so like getting that right without breaking things was really hard. And our playtesters were very adamant about things that they wanted to see out of Anakin and things that they felt were right for Anakin. And we were very adamant about things that we could not give to Anakin or let Anakin do because it would destroy our game. And so we had this kind of like great back and forth where we would put something on that we felt was very conservative, and then they would come back and tell us like, no, this is super busted. And then we would come back and we would put something that we thought was like maybe super busted because maybe we were a little frustrated with the conversation. Be like, oh no, this feels great. And then we would play a couple more games and then, oh, this does feel great. Maybe we'll make this little tweak. So I think there was more back and forth and wringing our hands and worrying if we were going to ever get there with Anakin over anyone else. But luckily, I think we did in the end, and I think he's a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, no, he looks great. We got a chance to record a game last night, and
Oh, that's great.
yeah, we
He's
hit right away, so that's good.
he's pretty wild. Yeah.
Yes, he is. I definitely feel the improvement, so that's great. The one question that our Discord and our patrons asked a bunch was the cards. We noticed a couple little misprints or errors or sizing issues with the stance cards and
Mhm.
Gideon not having health, for example. Are you guys
Yeah.
planning on updating that?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be working on an update for that. What we'd like to do with these is like, unfortunately, sometimes little things do slip through, and it's not something that we want to happen, but it's a reality. And so when that happens, we wait a day or two and wait for all of the feedback to roll in, because the unfortunate truth is that like the second someone says something, we could jump on it and we could fix it and we could like light the fires and get it going, and we would fix that one thing, and then someone would find something else, and then all of a sudden we have to light those fires and start like burning on a fix. So we just kind of let it sit for a day, and we realized that there's a couple oopsies, and then we will go in and we will clean that document up, and we'll put it out with a post. We've done it with the other game lines, and it's unfortunate, but we're happy to try and get that fixed up so that people can use these things and get the best use out of them.
Yeah, perfect. That's great to hear. And now we kind of talked about the core box and what character had the biggest update, but just overall in the update in general, I know characters like Mace had a big one and
Mhm.
some others. Which one would you say had the largest change from the way they came out to their update now, in your opinion?
Biggest change from the way they came out to the way they are now. Hmm. Uh, Probably R2D2 and C3PO, if I had to say one, because really our overarching goal is that we don't want them to change too much. So when we create a unit for Shatterpoint, we have an idea of what we want the unit to do. We have an idea of what we want its battlefield role to be. Like we want this to be a control type character. We want this character to go punch people. We want this character to do these things to support their friends, etc. And we really want to try and like stay guided by that North Star, even when we do these updates. You don't want to go in and completely change the way that a character plays and that they interact with the game, because players get used to playing with the character in their play style doing their thing. Like if I'm a player that really enjoys control, I don't want the control character that I love playing to get an update and all of a sudden they're a beat stick. Like that's not great for the person that has a specific play style. So, the goal was not for any of these to be huge changes, but R2D2 and C3PO, they they just weren't doing enough. Like at the end of the day, with the rest of the Ewok stuff, just had uh more synergies with the other Ewoks and more they just fit together better. And really, C3PO R2D2 didn't have enough direct battlefield impact, which is a thing that we'll talk about a lot. So we went in and we gave them some options that allowed them to throw out a couple extra attacks, have get some shoves, make some things happen on the battlefield, and also just kind of bump up their buffs a little bit, just to make them feel like they do a little more. And then we also dropped their point cost, because even with those changes, we felt like their impact was not on par with other like 4 point units. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I would agree. I think newer players underestimate how good a shove is in this game. So giving them a little more access to that can really help them just with the control aspect, getting people off
mhm.
points, getting to where you need to. So yeah, no, that's a very good change. Now, some of the units received, let's say, pullbacks a little bit, like Django, for example. He was a little too
Yeah,
strong. You guys mentioned it in the article. When you're looking at units that you're not trying to improve, but you're trying to rein in a little bit, what's the difference in the design philosophy? How do you kind of do that? And how do you, end of the day, pick which units you're going to do that with? Because obviously, some people are going to be like, you killed my favorite unit, like even though you didn't kill him. We both know you didn't. You just made it
yeah.
playable. They're going to have that mentality. Like, what can you say to those people?
I mean, it always hurts to have something taken away from you, right? Like even if you know you shouldn't have it, like you had it and that felt great. So it always hurts to not have the thing you had before. So I think to those people, I would say I understand and I'm sorry. But at the same time, like we do need to watch for the overall health of the game and make sure that things are fun and enjoyable. Um, what was the philosophy? I feel like so many of these answers are cop outs, but it's the same philosophy as the buffs. You want to do the lightest touch possible, and you want to fix the problem and not cause new ones. Um, or don't fix what's not the problem. So Jango Fett, we're talking about Jango Fett. So the issues with Jango Fett, like Jango Fett's a cool character. He does a lot of great stuff. He feels like a bounty hunter. He can tie you down. He can pull you in. He can shoot you. He can shoot you when it's not his turn. Like he can do all this cool stuff. And we wanted to keep all of that feeling. But first off, we looked at the out of activation shot. Like it does this in the old incarnation, it could do this really unfortunate thing where it makes you lose your activation as the other player, just because you had the audacity to play the game. And that was incredibly rare for that to happen. I mean, like the chances of it all lining up and you get the right results and it wounds the character. I mean, like abysmally low percent chance. But if it happens to you one time in your brain, that's what always happens. experience, right?
Yep.
It's a terrible experience. You get that confirmation bias. Like you remember that awful thing that happened. You tell the story to your friends, and they tell the story to their friends, and then somewhere down the line that becomes someone's story about how it happened to them. Like that's just the way this stuff happens, and that's okay. So we just said, okay, well, let's remove that. And we looked at Grief Karga, and we said this ability is almost the same thing. It works off of a unit that's activating out of reserve, so it's more niche, but it still does the thing that we want it to do. It lets him shoot out of activation at someone that's going and ruin the enemy's plans, and it doesn't cause this like horrendous, awful experience where someone doesn't get to go. So easy change. And then we just felt like he offered a little too much impact for what he was. 4 point secondary, the 2 force refresh was just a lot. So we pulled that back a little bit, but we did want to make sure that we kept Jango Fett on the table as a good damage dealer, a strong combatant with some control aspects. I mean, like he's still the total package for 4 points. He's just not like the total package with another little bonus on the side, thanks for purchasing. So yeah, it's all about like trying to maintain the idea of what they do, maintain their play style, and maintain the fun of playing Jango Fett, but not ruin the other player's fun ever. Right? I don't think most of the time it was ruining people's fun. In fact, I never lost an activation to a Jango Fett, and I've played a lot of games of Shatterpoint, but I know that people have, and it was awful, so we fixed it.
Yeah, no, yeah. I have lost one turn to Jango Fett on the channel,
Mhm.
but just the
I,
one. But you were
sure.
right. Every time I play against Jango now, I'm looking at him like, man, if I move in, I could go down
Yeah.
again and
I
then
gotta
shoot
stay away
up
from that.
again.
That'd be the worst. That'd be the worst.
Yeah, so it almost makes me play very timid around him, especially if I have not full health, we'll say, great going in there. So that's good. I'm happy with that change.
As
Um,
they say, once bitten, twice shy.
pretty much. Now, one of our players in our group that comes on the channel sometimes, he loves the Inquisitors, and he was beyond happy in all of our Discords and chats that you guys boosted the Inquisitors because some of the Inquisitors were hitting a little
Eh,
below the belt. So, with that in
yeah.
mind, like, how did you look at the Inquisitors as a whole? Because you almost changed them all, not quite them all, but almost. You changed the big ones. How did
Mhm.
you look into them, and what kind of way did you want to lean with them to get them to where they're at now?
Yeah, so the Inquisitors in specific. So we said like the Inquisitors are not quite doing what we want them to do. Uh, Third Sister is a meme in the community. That's not great. Um, People aren't really playing Fourth Sister, and Grand Inquisitor sees some play, but we generally thought that was because people like the character more so than that they necessarily thought that he was fantastic on the battlefield. So we took a look at them just like as a whole, and the first thing we said is, well, people are playing Fifth Brother, so Fifth Brother's probably fine. So we took Fifth Brother, we just put him off to the side. He's fine. And then we looked at the rest of them and we said, okay, so what's happening here? And Fourth Sister was probably the easiest one to figure out. And we were like, Fourth Sister does the same things that Fifth Brother does, but she doesn't do them as well. And
Yep.
that's the old incarnation is what I'm talking about. So Rutan, the other developer that works on Shatterpoint with me most of the time, and I, we sat down and we said, okay, well, what can we do with Fourth Sister that makes her different? And and Rutan is a genius. And he looked at me and he goes, what if she could throw her lightsaber? And it was a light bulb moment for us both. Like, oh, what if she had a range attack? So we gave her a range attack, and that felt really good because all of a sudden you had an Inquisitor that could reach out and touch someone from across the battlefield that wasn't GI with his very low range attack. But you had a supporting unit that you could put in your other squad, or that felt like maybe it could do something other than what Fifth Brother was doing, and that felt really good, and it was pretty spot on. But then it became very like you just throw someone in melee with Fourth Sister and then she can't shoot. So that's where Swift Retreat came. We said, well, what if she can always get away? Like the original ability, like we wanted her to feel slippery, like you wound her and now she's somewhere else. But um, we opted for Swift Retreat because honestly, just looking at Sabine Wren, and she has a Daughter of Mandalore, where whenever she dashes, she can jump, and that freedom of movement felt really good. So for an Inquisitor with a thrown lightsaber attack, it just felt like a great idea to say like every time she advances, she can reposition instead, so you can't lock her down on her turn. And those changes really opened her up a little bit. She just felt like a different character and like she was doing new and cool things, which was great. So then we moved on and we looked at Third Sister. And Third Sister had a cool concept, but she just was a little force hungry. Like she didn't quite have the impact that we wanted her to have. So we just changed things around on her and made her a little more just get a little more value out of her abilities. So she has a free active to let someone move and attack. We changed up her your fear will betray you. So fear will betray you used to be kind of like a win more, and it was about how many objectives you had. And so we flipped that on its head. We thought honestly this one was more like, oh, it's going to feel a lot more thematic if we make this based on like what your opponent has. Like you think you're winning, but your fear betrays you. I'm actually ahead, and it Also just feels better for the character that like if things aren't going well now, it feels like she can really get you out of a bind because she's going to get this extra out of the fact that things aren't going great. And then obviously she had some changes on her stance and her dice. They were just not great. Like
Yeah.
those units were made very, very early in the game. So, when they were playtesting, they were fighting things like 501st Clone Troopers and Anakin and Ahsoka out of the core box. And like those other characters that we made a lot of changes on were the only things that existed for these to fight against when we were making them. And so it's only natural that if they felt like they were doing fine against all of the things that we bumped up, then they probably also need to get bumped up as well.
Good point.
And then Grand Inquisitor, so the like I think the biggest change on Grand Inquisitor and maybe the scariest change on Grand Inquisitor is Secrets Uncovered doesn't have a range anymore. It's
Yes.
still 2 force, which is like, wow, that's a lot. And if you wound him, it's like, oh, I may never use that. But it really just says to your opponent, like, you can't step off that point because if you do, it's not yours anymore. And that being quote in the chamber is terrifying, right? Like people are going to sit there and they're going to be like, oh man, he could do this to me at any time, so I can't get off that point. I can't utilize this activation to do something else because that's one of the things you do in Shatterpoint, right? Is you get the activation and the characters are on the point and you're like, well, I have this point and there's no one near me to take it, so now I can do something cool and bombastic with this character and put them in a risky position, and maybe I'll lose the point later, but I'll have it for another turn, but now maybe you won't.
Yeah.
So I think that is a huge change for him. And then his identity just got smoothed out, very similar to how we smoothed out other identities. I think most of the identities that we touched in this, it was about making sure that they provide consistent value. So Grand Inquisitor was only really providing value against Force users. And as the game grows and continues, there are going to be more and more squads where there are no Force users because we're moving into other eras. And so we wanted to kind of just even that out a little bit where he gets half the benefit as long as you wound someone and as long as a Galactic Empire person is doing it. And then if it happens to be a Force user, you get bacon. And that felt really good. So that's kind of where all those ideas came from. And then now we can put the Inquisitors on the table with other Empire stuff, and they feel like they're gelling with the Empire, not just with themselves. So they're still very much their own little like pocket of the Empire, but they fit better in the whole machine.
Yeah, and the force user changed, even though it seems little. I think that was huge because, like you said, at the time they came out, it was most time you're playing against multiple force users. But
Yeah.
now with Rebels and Cassian and etc., Empire, Gideon,
Mhm.
there's not as many force users necessarily on the opposite side or any. So that's a nice change.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as the game grows and as things continue on, we need to reassess the things that we're looking at. And it made sense when we were thinking about like all these Jedi characters. Like, oh yeah, Force users, they're always born on those at the table. No, there won't. A couple years later, no, there won't.
No, there won't. No, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And your article was great. I was reading through it, looking at it, and you guys highlight a lot of the big changes like Anakin and Vader, etc. But some of the characters, until you open the document, you didn't realize they were
Mhm.
changes. You didn't touch on them too much because maybe they had a small change or it wasn't big, and you put them in there. Like Cad Bane and the Bounty Hunters. I've seen people asking for a
Yeah,
long team for Cad Bane, Hondo, the generic Bounty Hunters, the Weekly Pirates to get some kind of love to help them. And I think, yeah, you have all four on there right now, so that's great.
yeah,
Talk a little bit about those changes.
yeah. So the article, first and foremost, like honestly, I forgot when I was going through, and like so a team of us write those things, and we just forgot to include them in the article. So sorry for that. They had like probably, I don't want to say the smallest changes because the era changes are big, but it wasn't like big, wide sweeping changes to abilities where like I remember writing this card. So when it came time to talk about like what did we do on Cad Bane? I don't know, did we touch Cad Bane? No, of course we touched Cad Bane. We changed his eras and things. So yeah, all of the Cad Bane, the Bounty Hunters, and then Guarm, Weequay Pirates, and Hondo Onaka can all now go into other eras, which really opens up their squad
Great.
building. And then on top of that, I think the Weequay got the creme de la creme of those kind of upward adjustments. So like the Weequay Pirates, their range attack is a lot more substantial now. They feel like a four cost. And I think exit strategy, which lets them climb while they're engaged, is my favorite addition to those units because it really opens up their defensive expertise and all the other things that they can do, so that they feel like the kind of squirmy, squiggly pirates that they are working for Hondo and Naka. And then the era changes, and what's so exciting about that is like the scoundrel tag is probably one of the widest tags in Shatterpoint. Like if you want to just play the scoundrels, like that's cool. There's so much fun stuff that you can do. And so by widening the eras that Hondo and Cad Bane can kind of fit into, we just give more options to put all those characters together and more ways to do different and fun and zany list builds, and also to just, again, have your dream strike team, have your dream squad, put it on the table, and have a great time with it.
I love that you guys are opening up eras. So, previous update, you guys gave the Mandos to get more things. So we could have a full Mando double trick,
Yeah,
which was great. This one now we're seeing the more bounty hunters being able to mesh together. Aura Singh got a pretty good upgrade too to kind of mesh in that field as well.
yep.
So it's really nice seeing them being able to pull them together because some people were like, I would love to run XYZ together, but I can't because the eras, and now they can. So that's always fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know if you're planning on talking about Aura Singh later, but she was a lot of fun, and she was definitely a big change for us. I really like where that landed. I like she kind of feels like the ultimate bounty hunter now, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're paying me, I will do whatever you say, sir. So yeah, and also, she had some updates to her expertise, just makes her feel a little bit more like a five cost, like her attacks have more impact, and her defense expertise changes are probably. I think her defense expertise changes is the biggest thing because now if you get a shot at Aura Singh, it better hit because you're probably not going to get another one between that dash and that reposition on there. Like she's squarely.
Yeah, no, I think hers was probably one of the more welcome ones, the Bounty Hunters, because for her cost, she was a little under for where
Absolutely.
others would be at that cost. So now I haven't played her yet, but she looks on paper to be really good now. So excited to get
She's really fun. She's really fun.
good, and that's what we want to see. So that's great. And we mentioned earlier R2D2 and C3PO changes in the Ewok kind of battle boxes.
Mhm.
Also, Logray and Chipper kind of got updates as well. How do you see
Yeah.
them kind of helping the Ewoks perform overall now with that synergistic kind of boost?
Yeah, I think the big thing for Ewoks that I think was really making Ewoks struggle, and there may be more to it, and maybe we're not done with Ewoks, and somewhere down the line you'll see other ones. Who knows? But one of the big things that I think was really hurting Ewoks is that Ewoks are built around being fast. Like they start the game, and when we released Ewoks, we even said like they probably want to win struggle one and struggle two because they're not going to last a long time. Um, so one of the like kind of fundamental problems with the Ewoks is that you really wanted a specific draw order with your order deck in order to make things happen the right way so that you could move the right pieces so that when the other units went that you would go and they would be within range four of Chirpa and or Logray or whoever they need to be to get their buffs. So we just removed those ranges and let the Ewoks have their little bumps across the entire table. It keeps the primary units as targets, which was the goal with the abilities in the first place, but it also just lets the Ewok player have that freedom to go wherever it is that they need to go on the table to win the game. So you're definitely in a situation before where if you had to go across the table to take a point, you were losing your extra defense die, you're losing your extra damage die, and all of a sudden you're just an Ewok. You're just a little fuzzy guy standing in no man's land, and that never feels good. So we wanted to make sure that we opened those up, and then the identities again. We want to make sure they provide consistent value. So it's a situation where like there were weird timing things that were happening, or you didn't know if something was going to work, or like a bad situation would happen, and all of a sudden like you don't get any value out of the identity. So we made some small tweaks to those to make sure that like when they go off, and you get to do the thing. Does this mean that Ewoks are going to win all of their games? No, but it does hopefully mean that when you play a game with your Ewoks, that you're going to have a better time. You're going to get to use your abilities more consistently, and maybe find some ways to make some high impact.
Yeah, I realize as I've gotten older, I like a lot of the things that I'm not gonna say people don't like, but aren't as popular. Like I love Gungans, I love Ewoks, right? I
Mhm,
love all these
mhm.
creature troopers. And so I always played Ewoks, and I will tell you, not being in range of the bubble of those abilities really hurt them. So
It's a
that's
thing.
probably the next match I'll be playing on the channel is the Ewok skin to try that out because it looks
Oh,
much.
great! I look forward to watching it.
Now, kind of shifting gears to the Empire side of things, Empire had been performing very efficiently, especially with like Gideon Hass and the ISFs and Iden kind of strike box. From a design perspective, how did you determine what to change? And I think most community knew something had to happen with the Gideon kind of bubble there. So just talk
Yeah.
a little bit.
So again, I feel like I'm saying the same things over and over again, but I think that's a good thing because it means that we stuck to our guiding principle. So the goal was the least touch as possible. So like, what change can you make that does the least shift with the most impact? And so we looked at the nightmare that was Iden Versio, right? Like that whole squad box, right? And we said, what's the problem in here? Is it Iden Versio? And we talked about it for a little bit, and like Iden's strong, and Iden does really nasty stuff. But like Iden's a primary unit. Other primary units also do really nasty stuff. And she didn't necessarily feel out of line like in a vacuum. Is she strong? Absolutely. Is that a problem? I don't think so. But then what was a problem really was Gideon Hask. And the additional strike just being added to everything. When you start looking at Iden Verso and then saying like, well, what happens when we let you have extra strikes on top of the dice that you already roll? So it's not even just like your roll got better. It's like this is a strike out of nowhere that you never would have had. it increases like the threshold of how high you can go. It does a lot of different things, and it was touching things like Vader, it was touching things like Iden Versio, it was touching things like Death Trooper Escort, it was touching like everything on the battlefield, and we hadn't calibrated for that properly, quite frankly. It sounds very innocuous, like, oh, one strike, who cares? No, that one strike matters, and we've learned that lesson. Um, uh, so we just knew that we needed to shift that, but we didn't want to take it away completely. Again, it's the whole play style thing, right? Like if you love Gideon Hask, you love Inferno Squad, which like that's a very common thing. Inferno Squad is a cool squad in the Empire. Like they're one of the named squads. Everyone knows who Inferno Squad is. So you want them to feel strong. You want them to feel like they're doing the Inferno Squad thing, but we don't want them to feel like they're the only option in the game. And it was starting to kind of trend that way for Empire players. Like Empire lists would start with ISF, Gideon Hask, let's go. And you never want that. So we needed to pull that back. And where we decided to do that was to pull back on the impact it's going to have on the secondaries and the primary units. Because the Imperial supporting units, like they're pretty good, but they're not beat stick units, right? For the most part. Well, we're going to talk about ISF in a second, but for the most part, your Empire supporting units are not doing the most damage in the game. So letting Gideon Hask like let them have that feels good, and it feels like it helps to adjust the Empire game plan so that their supports are doing a little more. But it also doesn't feel like if you don't put Gideon Hask on the table that you've just like kind of given up the game, or
Yeah.
you're being a nice person, right? So that was that shift. And then ISF were just too good. If you look at their old combat tree, it capped out at 8 damage with the condition on there. So if both characters hit with both attacks and maxed out, which like again, probably not going to happen, but when it does, that's 17 damage. That's a lot.
Yeah.
um, so that was just too much. So we wanted to even that out, and we evened it out on the back end. So like your high results don't do as much damage. So there's still ISF are still a strong unit, and ISF can still reliably do a decent amount of damage, like a good amount of damage. But they're not going to be just blowing everything up anymore.
Yeah.
And what we did to kind of compensate for that is to try and hopefully give them a little bit more of that special forces feel by moving that reposition up the tree one position so that they get that more consistently. So you may not be like doing 8 damage, but you're doing a solid amount of damage, and you get to put yourself in a better position. Maybe get on a point, maybe put yourself where you're not going to get counterstruck, things like that. So the overall goal was like lower the impact, little touches, like Gideon Hask now only affects supports as opposed to affecting everybody. So he's still strong. He still has impact. He still feels worth bringing. And the ISF do less damage, but they're more mobile. They get to do something different. So they still fulfill their role. They're just not like, why wouldn't you take this good?
Yep. No, I think you hit on the head because the biggest issue I saw with it playing a lot of games was the Vader and him combo, where Vader would add his own dice to his pool, then he would add a
Yep.
hit result, and then Vader was just a not that he's not
Just
already a wrecking ball, but it was even like wow.
and don't get me wrong. Like I don't think there's any situation where someone comes up to me and they're like, man, Vader's a wrecking ball. And I go,
Yeah.
oh, that's a problem. Like, that's not a problem. But the problem is that Vader is a wrecking ball on his own, and we don't need to make him like a wrecking ball with a bomb on it.
Yeah, pretty much. No, that's a
Yeah.
good point. Now, I'm really excited to try Anakin and Ahsoka in the 501st because I haven't played them in a little bit and they're all refreshed now. But how do you feel about the state of the early Republic characters in general? Like with Mace and Obi and Anakin, like how after this change do you feel that early kind of Republic era is doing now?
Frankly, I think they're kind of terrifying. Um, and part of that is just from like a sleeper hit perspective. Like because there's a piece of your brain that you know how we talked about Jango Fett, like that one bad thing happens and for the rest of your life, like Jango Fett's gonna ruin your day and he's
Yeah.
OP and he stole your lunch. Every person that plays Shatterpoint has been playing against Galactic Republic and kind of like laughing at their buddy for putting their 501st on the table or like, why are you playing 212? They're going to come up to the table and they're going to see the 212th and they're going to be like, oh, 212th and Cody? Okay, fine. And they're going to put something too far forward. And then it's just going to be wounded the next turn because the 212th are so consistent now. Rutan is a really big map guy and he got got really, really into the expertise trees as we were working on this, and kind of like we were talking about all the different ways that you can mess with the expertise trees so that you can get additional results without pushing how much damage they do, without pushing how far they're going to go down their tree, and like how can we make a unit that like most of the time does okay, and then sometimes they just like nuke you from orbit. Kind of the opposite of the ISF, and that's where the 212 landed. And like between the rerolls from Cody and the adjustments to the 212th expertise tree, the 212th are terrifying, especially with Cody. 501st are much more solid now than they used to be. Again, like it's a pretty small change. You look at the expertise chart and it's like, oh, there's a crit on there. Okay. Having a crit is huge. Especially when your first box before it was a pin, now it's a pin and a damage. So like that first one, it's a damage and a pin. Pin is very impactful. And then if the second one does it and they get their crit from their expertise, like that's another 2 damage. So all of a sudden you're doing 3 damage with your 3 point cost unit just for basically just for existing because you're
Yep.
probably going to roll an expertise in there, right? So that is like that's just way more impact than 501st had in the first place. And if you're ignoring them, like 3 points can be meaningful because a lot of the times people talk, and then, we watch the community and we listen to people talk, and I think there's a lot of inclination in gaming in general, but especially in Shatterpoint, that like if you can't one shot something, people are like, this isn't very good because it doesn't one shot things. But I think that most of the time you're not really one shotting characters. Like if you put 3 damage into any primary or secondary with your 501st, your primary will take it out on their turn. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the 501st like just really become this great little linchpin that can run around and reliably put some damage out and kind of do their thing, which is what we always wanted the 501st to feel like. And then you've got Anakin and Mace who now have range attacks. So the range game of the Republic has grown by leaps and bounds.
That was my favorite thing for my first game with the new is having the
It,
range options on them is so big.
the range option on Anakin is phenomenal because it takes a minute to kind of put this all together, but like you can use the range attack to set up I'm going to end this and get your second attack, change your stance to the other one, and like go ham, right? So it's great. I think it's really good for the Republic to have this kind of like little bump up. I don't think it's huge. I think they're terrifying more because players are going to be so used to them feeling like an underdog, and I don't think they're an underdog anymore. I think that we've done a really good job of like taking things and kind of bringing them up to the place where we design units now, and that they have more reliable impact. I think that's the biggest. Like across the board, if you look at the changes, aside from the things where we had to pull something back, the impact of the characters is more reliable now. So like Mace Windu, used to be that he would only get his Shatterpoint ability if you chose him to Shatterpoint with. That's not always the right choice. The excitement of drawing that Shatterpoint card is I get to go with anyone. And the minute that you have someone on the table that says, yeah, but if you go with me, you get this great bonus, it's always going to feel like it should go to them. And
Hmm.
I think especially like for a new player, and I remember like when I was first starting, every time I drew a Shatterpoint, I was like, which primary is going? Which primary is going? And more than anything, I think like nowadays when I play the game and I pull the Shatterpoint, I'm like, all right, which support can go? And that never
2 units. So.
felt right. But sometimes it's the right call. And like sometimes it's just like I have 2 bodies, so I can go to 2 places where I can get 2 attacks and I need to like make sure I get this condition on there. And then other times, like absolutely, it's like, okay, Cannon Jarrus, go do your thing. Like whoever it is, right? But yeah, I think I don't I got a little lost in that. I apologize.
No, it's good to hear.
So yeah, I think the Republic. We're talking about the Republic. Thank you. Yeah, I think the Republic is going to be scary from a perspective of like people aren't going to know what to expect and they're going to come out of the door swinging. But then in a few weeks it'll calm down and everybody like, oh right, they're terrifying. So yeah, I
Yep.
think they're in a good spot. I'm excited to see where it turns out.
And then we saw a couple characters that I paid attention to at least because I play these factions a lot. Is like Luke got like a small but not a small upgrade at the same time. You guys gave him the ability to affect more with his ability at the bottom than you did before. Just talk a little bit about Luke.
Yeah, so Luke has a pretty modest change, but we gave him a bubble on his identity. So we talked about if you were watching the extravaganza a couple years ago, we talked about when we designed Luke, and the kind of the concept behind Luke was that Luke helps his friends by being Luke, by being the Jedi Knight that no one has seen in so long. And from a concept for Luke that works, but for a game like Shatterpoint, it doesn't really work because you want your characters to have a lot of impact on everyone else on the table. And even if they are a strong character, if they're not moving other people, if they're not affecting other people, if they're not buffing other people, it kind of feels like you've missed out. And so we were pretty overall happy with what Luke was doing. Like he definitely feels like Jedi Knight Luke. We liked most of the abilities on his card, but the identity was just a little too greedy. And so I think it was Schick came up with the idea of like, what if you gave it to everyone? And we had just done the Ewoks and removed the bubbles from them, and I was like, yeah, but what if it had a bubble? Because it felt really, really good. Like immunity conditions is incredibly strong, especially the conditions that he has immunity to, and just giving that to everyone is it's incredible. I remember there was a playtest game I played against Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian, and I will never forget it because it was one of the most humbling experiences of my life. I felt like I couldn't do anything. My opponent just had so much control over the condition game, and it was really really neat. It was a really neat game to play, and a very neat game to lose. Um, and that game in and of itself, and like a couple others that we played, just made us go like, okay, yeah, this is enough. This is enough shift on Luke that like Luke's combat trees are solid. He can do damage if he gets in there. He does his thing. He has some cool control with his objective ability, and yeah, the bubble just makes him feel like he's there for the team, and that's what we wanted out of him.
Yeah, like I said, it's definitely a small upgrade, but it helps a ton. And being immune when you need to be defensive against expose is huge, and then when you need to be mobile, if you're having the right stance and you're immune to pin, is huge. So I think that little change really kind of just gave him a little extra, and that was really nice to see.
Yeah, that was kind of the goal.
And then the only other trooper I wanted to kind of touch on just for a second here was the Dark Troopers. They got a little reeled in there. Just talk about the
Yes.
Dark Trooper update and how you guys went about looking at that.
Yeah, I mean, the Dark Troopers were a defensive powerhouse. And you look at Dark Troopers, they can't be moved by pushes or pulls on abilities. They have protection. They have great defensive expertise, the old incarnation. And so, we looked at them and we said, okay, well, they have protection, so they can lose the stamina. Like most of the other units that have protection don't have that much health. So we pulled that off, and that felt pretty okay. But then their defense expertise was just cuckoo bananas. Like it was really, really good, right? And it felt good for Dark Troopers because you want Dark Troopers to be scary. We've all seen the shows, we all know the media, like we know what Dark Troopers are supposed to be, but they were just too much. When the only real thing you can do to the Dark Troopers on any given turn, like consistently that you can count on, is to shove them with an attack, and then you just can't get the attacks through because the expertise is too good, and you can't get to that shove that might be three results down your tree because you're shooting with something that's not optimal. That felt really bad, and it felt like there was no counterplay to the Dark Troopers, and they just felt like the best 4 points on the table. And so you can look back at Empire lists and like what were Empire lists? They were Dark Troopers and Gideon Hask and ISF and Verso, and not a lot of spread past that. And so we just said like, okay, well, we got to pull these guys back a little bit defensively, and I think they're still a very strong unit. I don't think that they don't do anything that they were doing before. You can just kind of handle them a little bit. Your opponent is going to have such a bad time with them, so you're still going to get kind of like your big implacable unit on the table that they have to think very specifically about how they're going to get past it, and they're going to have to use attacks to do it rather than using like a force push, which is valuable, right? Because it means that you're dictating where your opponent's going to go, but it's just not going to be the foregone conclusion that they're on that point and that point is yours.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had some issues with them here and there, just trying to get damage through, so that makes sense.
Mhm.
Now, out of all the changes that we've talked about and that you guys have implemented with this change, what are you most excited to see how the community uses it and what they do with it? Like, is there a certain character? Like, what are you most excited to see
Oh,
with this?
oh, that's easy. That's easy. It's Asajj Ventress. Um, I've been saying since day one that I think Asajj Ventress is undervalued and underplayed, and that she is awesome. And I thought that she was fantastic from day one. And with the tweaks that we've made to her, she's amazing. She's just so
Just in
much fun
case
to
someone
play.
hasn't seen the tweaks, talk a little bit about
Yeah,
the tweaks and
yeah.
why she's amazing.
So the tweaks on Asajj are deceptively simple. So again, identity was made to provide consistent value. So we smoothed out her identity so that every time she wins a character, she refreshes a force. And then if it was, this type of character, you get this benefit, and if you get this type of character, you get this benefit. So it's sort of a tiered system of reward, where it feels so now. Like previously, we didn't have that tiered system of reward. You just got the reward if you killed the big guy. And so you always wanted to launch Asajj at a secondary or primary, like a very specific target that was going to be difficult to take out. And now, no matter what Asajj is wounding, you're getting a benefit. So going with Asajj and attacking something and taking them out always gives you bacon, which feels great. Then on top of that, we looked at Slip Away, and Slip Away is a cool ability, but it requires a lot of setup. You have to have another character shooting unit that's in combat with Asajj, which means that you got into combat with Asajj, or someone got in combat with Asajj, and then Asajj didn't take them out. So you're not feeling great about that. Now you want to send her somewhere else to do something else. It's just kind of this Rube Goldberg machine of making that work to make her flit around the table. And we had been working on Fourth Sister, and Swift Retreat was working out so well that I said, what would happen if we put Swift Retreat in place of Slip Away on Asajj? And the answer is that Asajj goes wherever Asajj wants to go on Asajj's activation, which felt very right for Asajj because, if you watch Clone Wars, Asajj is always flitting around the battlefield.
Yeah.
It for me, Clone Wars is kind of like Ahsoka and Asajj doing cool stuff on the good guy doing cool stuff, bad guy doing cool stuff. Because I'm very much into that, like very agile, stealthy, fast attacker. Like that's my power fantasy. So giving her Swift Retreat just lets her get around the table wherever she wants to go. And then the tweaks that we made to the expertise, um, she's so consistent now. And she still may not one shot a primary, but if that primary has like I was talking about before, I don't think you really generally one shot most things. Like if you can put a couple damage into something and then sick Asajj on it, it's dead. Like she's gonna take it out. She's gonna do her job. She's just a missile now, and she goes where you want her to go. She does what she wants to do. She already could move across like pretty much the entire table. Now she just moves across the entire table. Like you're not safe from Asajj, and I can't wait to see more people play her. And I hope that I'm right.
Yeah, no, we'll have her on the channel soon too to see how that works out because I love fast characters. Ahsoka's one of my favorites. Asajj was always a good foil to her, so it's going to be good times.
Yeah.
Now we're coming up to the end of this. Any other changes I'm missing? Any other insights? Anything else you want to talk to the community about before we wrap up here? Anything you could think of?
I mean, I think anytime that we do one of these, there's gonna be someone out there that's like, oh no, they didn't get this character, and this is the character they really needed to fix. And to that person, I just want to say, I'm sorry. Maybe you're right. The truth of the day is the truth of the day. The truth of the matter is like we only have so much time and we only have so much bandwidth, and we need to make sure that we're hitting what we think are the biggest offenders. And we're human. Maybe we missed something, and maybe there's something that should have seen an adjustment, and that doesn't mean that it never will. Like we may do this again in the future. I'm not committing to like a timeline or anything here, but you know, we do our best, and inevitably things are not going to get touched that you wish it got touched, but hopefully you're going to find some joy in something that did get fixed, and hopefully people just enjoy the game. Like we're really looking forward to just watching what people do with all the new stuff, and yeah, it's just a really exciting time. We're so thrilled to have this update out there finally. Like people have been talking about it for months at this point, and yeah, the hype is awesome. So thank you,
Yeah,
thanks to
no,
everyone.
thanks for coming on. And I will admit, it's almost like we got like a lot of expansions at once, even though they're units that a lot of us have, but it's so new and so different. Everyone's like, I gotta try this with this and that with this. So it's a nice refresh, especially right with summer coming. It's a good time for it.
Hmm.
So we really appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah, well, we're excited. I think you're right. I think it does feel like you got a whole bunch of new expansion packs, and the best part is you don't have to paint them. If you've already painted them, they're already there and they're just ready to go.
Exactly. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming to the channel. We'll definitely have you back in the future. If
I
anyone
look
else
forward
has
to
any
it.
questions, drop them below. I will do my best to answer them. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, man. It was a blast. You have a great day, okay?
Everyone have a great day.